High-end audio is a swamp of pseudoscience, snake oil and marketing so slimy it could make a used car salesman blush. A circus where engineering lightweights and gullible hi-fi hobbyists buy power cables for $1,000 a piece that promise to unlock hidden dimensions in the music so profoundly that you will suddenly start hearing notes that the musicians didn't know they played. So anyone as scathingly skeptical as me should instantly dismiss any headphone amplifier that costs $4,000 as just another act in the hi-fi clown show. Well, here is a headphone amplifier that costs $4,000. It's the Benchmark HPA4. Am I holding pure snake oil, or does this device have a place in a pro studio? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be finding out in today's video. And while we're at it, here's another luxury headphone amplifier, the Austrian Audio X1. This is a very beautiful headphone amplifier. But why stop there? We can also check out the Fosse Audio ZH3, and this thing is so new it's not even out yet at the time of me recording this, so I'm going to have to wait to publish this video for the release date of this headphone amplifier, which is brand new. And Fosse Audio sent this over for free because I must have sold so many ZA3s for them when I promoted that in my speaker building calls, because almost everyone who built my speakers bought a ZA3 because this is basically the most obvious choice. Now, is this rubbish? We're going to find out, but big thanks to Fosse for sending this for free. It's almost free anyway. The retail price on this, I've been told, is $199, and it's also a DAC. We're going to get into that later in the video. They didn't give me any money to promote them. If it's crap, I'm going to tell you it's crap. So big thanks to Austrian Audio for sending over the really nice X1 headphone amplifier. Here it's about $1,500. This is a loan unit. I'm going to send it back. No money exchanged hands. And big thanks to Benchmark for sending out their beast of a headphone amplifier. This is, or we're going to see if this is worth 4,000 euros or dollars. This is a serious bit of kit. No money exchanged hands. This has got to go back as well. And so this is an unbiased review. If this is complete snake oil nonsense, you'll know by the end of the video. Now, contrary to all of the hi-fi channels here on YouTube describing some headphone amplifiers as airy and revealing and some as enlightening and moist, I'm not going to be using any of that bullshit language. We're just going to be looking at objective, measurable fact. Now, some people watching this are going to be like, this is a stupid waste of money. Don't people know you can just plug your headphones into the headphone jack on an audio interface such as this? Well, spoiler alert, it's actually way more nuanced than that, and that's the kind of thing we're going to find out very quickly in today's video. So we're going to throw two audio interfaces into the mix, the Focusrite Claret 8 Pre Plus, which I'm recording this video on, so I'm not going to hold it up, and the horrible piece of Behringer crap here that I talked about in previous videos, and we're going to get a good idea of the performance that you can expect from a typical USB interface by analyzing those two. I'm also going to throw in my trusty TC Electronic BMC2, which is, in my opinion, a secret gem if you use it as a DAC and digital monitor controller, but not necessarily as a headphone amp, and we're going to see why in this video. But when that thing came out, it was a pretty solid piece of professional gear, and it was something like twice the price of a Mackie Big Knob. So being a professional monitor controller, it should be a professional quality headphone amplifier. And it's described as being the most higher quality reference grade, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to see if that is true as well. And last but perhaps not least, we're going to compare two mystery headphone amps that I'm going to unveil later in the video. So I promised data, and we're going to start looking at it right now. And a lot of people talk about stupid metrics, which are practically irrelevant because they're just completely solved problems on any piece of gear that didn't fall out of a Christmas cracker. So I'm talking about stuff like slew rate, intermodulation distortion, high frequency extension, stuff like that. It's just a distraction. They're all solved problems at this point. So the first actual metric that is actually important is output impedance. That's the headline primary thing that you need to know about in any headphone amplifier. Does it have low output impedance? Now, I'm not going to make some kind of tutorial on how you can measure the output impedance from a headphone amplifier. You can find that out yourself online. But in order to do it, you need an actual oscilloscope. You can't just use one built into your DAW. You need to measure peak-to-peak voltage with an actual real hardware oscilloscope. And you need to make some kind of rudimentary jig so that you can put a couple resistors on there, so that you have a known load, and you can calculate the output impedance that way. So I did that with all of the headphone amplifiers, and I am going to reveal now the results of what I measured. So all three of the dedicated headphone amplifiers are so close to zero that I couldn't detect anything, so I'm just measuring a 0 for all three. The Behringer and Focusrite audio interfaces, as we can see, are not 0. They have some significant impedance, although the Focusrite unit is significantly better than the Behringer one. But the real surprise here is that the dedicated professional monitor controller, the TC Electronic BMC2, that has a ridiculously high output impedance of almost 80 ohms. Now, some people are going to find those numbers illuminating, and other people are just going to be like, well, does it actually sound different in the headphones? Because if it doesn't, I don't really care about numbers. I just want to hear if there's a difference or not. And we can measure that as well. And if we want to do that, we're going to need some headphones to test the real-world performance. I've got here the Composer headphones. These are the flagship headphones from Austrian Audio. They are an open-back dynamic, low impedance design, very high-end, high quality, and they cost about $2,500. I have also got the OLLO Audio X1. These are also an open back dynamic, low impedance design. They're more modestly priced at around 600 euros, and these were designed specifically for studio monitoring use. And last but not least, I've got my trusty old Sennheiser HD 660S, which is also an open back dynamic design, but this one has a more moderate impedance of around 150 ohms. This is a frequency response sweep of the Sennheiser headphones using the benchmark headphone amplifier. So this isn't representing an accurate frequency response of the headphones, but that doesn't matter because we're just concerned about how the response changes when plugging it into a different amp. Now, I unplugged the Sennheiser headphones from the benchmark amp and plugged them into one of the mystery headphones that we're going to talk about later in the video, and we can see that it's almost identical. It's like the lines are changing color because it's just so close to one another. There's almost no difference whatsoever. So we can see that plugging it into a different amp, if the amps are both good, it will be the same frequency response because they're both low output impedance amps. Now, if I then unplug it and plug it into the Behringer amp, we get this. You can see that the frequency response changes. It's lifted slightly in the highs and lifted a fair amount in the lows. It smiley face curves the response and makes the bass less tight. Now that's with the Behringer headphone amp. What happens if I use the BMC2, which we know has a pretty high output impedance, almost 80 ohms? Boom, we get a huge divergence in the lower mids and bass frequencies, and also it's messing with the high frequencies as well. But the main thing that we can see here is that the in the bass frequencies is just ridiculous. So if we measure around 100 hertz, it's around a 2 dB divergence in all of the lower mids and bass frequencies. That's actually quite a significant divergence from the original sound, how it should be using the benchmark amp or the mystery amp that we're going to talk about later in the video. Now, this is the OLLO Audio X1 plugged into the benchmark amp, and compared to our mystery amplifier, which has got a low output impedance, we can see that it's so the same that the line is literally just changing color. There's a bit of wiggling going on down here in the very low frequencies, but that's just measurement error. If we now look at the difference between what's happening when we plug it into the Behringer amp, we'll see that there's something weird going on. So the high frequencies are boosted slightly, and in the low frequencies, contrary to my expectations, the bass has actually dipped. Maybe that's just because the OLLO X1 are quite low impedance, and the Behringer headphone amp is just so feeble, it's struggling to put out the bass frequencies. I don't really know why that would be, why it would dip. I was expecting it to be boosted in the bass frequencies, but either way, we can see that between the good amplifiers, there's almost no difference, but between when we plug the Behringer in, we can see that there is a difference, and it's doing random, undefined differences. Now let's have a look at the BMC2. And this really surprised me because it's almost the same. So with the Sennheiser headphones, the BMC2 had a wildly different frequency response, but with the OLLO X1, it is almost identical. So I can't explain that at all. So you might be thinking, well, obviously I just made a mistake with my measurements and I measured the same thing twice or something. And I thought that, and I went back and measured it again, and no, with the BMC2, for some weird reason which I don't understand, the huge difference in output impedance between the BMC2 and the benchmark amp did not significantly affect the frequency response, and I don't know why. So let's now go on to the third pair of headphones, which is the Composer headphones, and we can see that this is the benchmark headphone amplifier. So this is how the headphones should be pretty much. And I also did the test with their own headphone, the Austrian Audio Full Score 1, and it's the same. That the output impedance is very low on that amplifier, and it's all the same. It's a very good amplifier, and we can just look at our mystery amplifier and also see that the line is just changing color because it's so close. Again, we have some measurement error wiggles in the very low frequencies, but it's essentially the same thing. If we plug it into the Behringer headphone amp, we see, again, there is a significant divergence. We're getting boosting in the high frequencies, even more than a decibel, I think, in the higher frequencies are being boosted, and here we are not getting as much bass. Again, I don't know why that would be. I would expect it to be hyped up in the bass, but maybe, as I said previously, the Behringer amp is just so feeble, it's not able to kick out the bass. I don't know. If you know, let me know down below in the comments. And then we plug it into the BMC2, and are we going to get a big divergence again or no divergence? Let's find out. Boom. We have a big divergence, and again, we have a big amount of hyped up, inaccurate, woolly, low end, all the way down into the sub bass, all the way up until like 1K. 1K it starts to really, the worst is probably around from 60 to 100, something like this. And it has really changed the tonality of these headphones, making them more scooped. Now, depending on who's watching this, you're either going to be thinking 2 to 3 dB deviation, you're wasting my time, what you on about, who cares about that? Or you're going to be thinking 2 to 3 dB, oh my god, that's such a huge difference. I didn't know that difference could be so big just by switching out the headphone amp. So it's really just down to who is watching this, but I personally fall into the camp that 2 to 3 dB deviation is absolutely massive, and that's just going to destroy my consistency and the way that I work. If I'm trying to rely on my headphones and I switch to a different amp, that's going to completely throw me off and destroy the kind of results that I'm getting. Completely inconsistent. 3 dB. I can't work like that at all. That's insane. But one really important thing to mention here is that this has nothing to do whatsoever with inherent frequency response. All of these headphone amplifiers have completely ruler flat frequency response from 20 Hz to 20 kHz, and you can't hear any difference in the tonality between these headphone amplifiers in of themselves. What you are hearing in the differences between the coloration here is the effect that the output impedance is having on the drivers in the headphones because of the impedance mismatch, the voltage dividing effect that it's having, and the effect it's having on the inductance of the voice coil and stuff like this. It's literally because of the impedance and not because of the frequency response of the amps themselves. They're all flat, and if a headphone amplifier doesn't have a flat frequency response, then it's broken or insanely low quality. Now, the next thing is a feature thing, and it's incredibly important for studio use, but a lot of people overlook this because they don't know how to monitor properly. So you might not have heard my rants before about fixed monitoring levels, but in short, if you don't have a recallable known reference monitoring level, you're not doing any serious monitoring, because the point of using headphones in the studio is to critically assess your mix or master in a way which removes the room and other variables from the equation. So if you listen at a random uncalibrated level, you're introducing a massive new variable into the mix, which is going to obfuscate any objectivity you expected to get out of the headphone check in the first place. So don't do that. You need a recallable reference level if you're going to be using headphones in the studio. You don't always need to listen at the exact same level, but you just need to be able to return easily to your reference level and check at that calibrated same reference level every time you are critically assessing a mix at a proper loudness. So without starting any arguments about the Fletcher-Munson curves and psychoacoustics, I'm just going to move on with the video and give my personal opinion that the recording interfaces like this one are completely unfit for actual critical monitoring with headphones because they don't have any calibrated way of returning to the level. You've literally just got a potentiometer, just a pot. There's no clicks, there's no ways that you can return to that level. You could maybe with Tipex or tape or something put like a little dot or pointer to the level and try and match that up, but even so it's not accurate enough because these knobs themselves, they're really inaccurate and fiddly, and it's not going to work. You can't get an accurate, exactly precise level set with a knob like this. It's not happening at all. So we can just remove those from the running and disqualify them. Recording interfaces are just unfit for studio headphone referencing because of that simple feature. You can't get a recallable level. So that's exactly why more expensive headphone amplifiers like this have a recallable level. Now you can hear here that the knob is very clicky, but it's not that clicking which is recalling the level. This knob is digitally controlling a bunch of relays inside here, and the relays are precisely setting the level. And in the case of the benchmark HPA4, you've got so many relays inside of here, it's actually quite heavy. This is full with relays because it's setting the level with relays across the entire range in 0.5 dB increments. So every time you do one of the clicks, it's increasing or decreasing the level in an absolutely precise 0.5 dB step across the entire range. That's one of the reasons why it's more expensive, and it's heavy and it's big. Now the Austrian audio design is kind of a halfway house. You've got a potentiometer like the crappy Behringer unit. However, it's a much better potentiometer, and the knob is a lot bigger, more luxurious, and it's got lots of little marks around it, so you could perhaps remember where one of the marks is and move it kind of precisely to that mark to recall a certain gain. And so that is absolutely sufficient, more than sufficient for hi-fi use, but it's kind of borderline, in my personal opinion, for studio use because there's no objective number or level that you can set it to. Now, if a bad guy breaks into your house and you need to neutralize the threat, I would recommend throwing the HPA4 at them. It's way heavier and going to do way more damage than the Fosse Audio headphone amplifier. This one is way lighter. It's nothing compared to this. Is a beast. This is a tank because it's just full with relays, and that's just getting the absolute precise level. Now this thing obviously isn't full of a bunch of relays, it's quite lightweight and compact, and so in here it's got some kind of digital control going on. And with digital control, you've normally got the option to do a very fine granularity indeed. A 0.1 dB step should be achievable in a digital domain, obviously, because it's just simple math. However, for some reason, they've gone with this particular design, they've gone for 2 dB steps, and at least the way that I measured it wasn't even exactly 2 dB steps. Like some steps were slightly larger than other steps, but either way, if you have a reference level, for example 22 or something, then you can just return to 22 and it will be the same level, despite the fact that approximate 2 dB steps aren't the optimal granularity. This is still completely recallable with an actual number that you can see, and you can objectively return to your reference monitoring level. And so this is something which could be used in a studio environment. But of course, these aren't the only ones available in the world. You've got other things as well. For years, people have been using the RME ADI2 for this exact reason. And it looks like Fosse Audio were probably inspired for their design, but it costs less than 1/4 of the price. And you've also got topping. But if you're going to save a bit of money by getting one of the premium Chinese offerings, you might as well just get the Fosse Audio one, because it's still less than half the price of that. Apart from that, in the hi-fi scene, there's a whole bunch of stuff with digitally calibrated levels, but it tends to be a bit more expensive. Now, in terms of the BMC2, I'm not even going to bother discussing that, because the output impedance is too high and it's just leading to unpredictable results. Sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's colored, very much so, and it's very difficult to know what's going on with that, so I just don't use it for headphones. Now, this next one is incredibly important for headphone amplifiers, and a lot of people overlook this. If you take a piece of junk like this, the level of the headphones is set with this single cheap potentiometer here, and it's typically less accurate the lower the level is. So when you turn down the level, the balance between the left channel and the right channel may wander. For example, if you turn the level up really loud, the channel balance, like the stereo image, like whether it's panned left or right, might be bang in the center. But the lower you turn it down and listen quieter, the more it might start wandering to one or the other sides. And on this one, when you turn it down, let's say you've just got like really sensitive headphones, so that you have to turn it down anyway, otherwise it's just too loud. Well, on the lower settings, this headphone amplifier can wander in its channel balance an outrageous amount, like 7 dB. And so it's like you're panning your headphones off to the side 7 dB. It's ridiculous. It's completely unusable. It's stupid. It's just a piece of junk. Now, this Austrian Audio headphone amplifier also has a potentiometer at the end of the day behind this very nice, smooth, higher quality knob. However, this is much higher quality and the tracking is way better. However, potentiometers are prone to this issue, and maybe this one is just a bit worn out because it's a demo unit and it's just been sent to loads of people, and people have been like twisting the knob because, oh, the knob feels so nice, and everyone's been twisting it, and so it's just worn out or something, I don't know. But this one that I measured happens to have a 0.4 dB channel imbalance when set at my nominal listening level. And when you turn it down, it actually improves slightly. So I think it's maybe just worn out slightly, and if you bought a new one, it would actually be quite good. So the Fosse Audio unit has no measurable channel imbalance across the entire range, so that's absolutely perfect. And the benchmark unit is, of course, outstandingly, precisely, absolutely perfect across the entire range. There's no detectable channel imbalances, even minus 60 dB, because all of these other tests I did at minus 40 dB, even at minus 60 dB, way quieter than you would normally listen. This has 0 detectable channel imbalances. Now, the Focusrite interface that I'm recording my mic through now has a potentiometer as well, the same as this, but it's way higher quality, and that shows in the test. This has got some ludicrous channel imbalance, whereas the Focusrite is way more within range. Despite that, I would still not go for a headphone amp with a potentiometer because you can't accurately recall it, despite the fact that it is demonstrably higher quality. So now a lot of people have probably been waiting for me to talk about noise floor and crosstalk and the quality of the power supply and stuff like this, which actually mainly just influences noise floor anyway. But again, these are for the most part solved problems, and it's not really very interesting because none of them have very high noise floors, and if it did, it would just be a piece of junk. So the final technical metric which I'm actually interested in is maximum output voltage. So having a healthy output voltage is most important with higher impedance headphones because they just need more juice to drive. Otherwise, you might start clipping the amplifier or getting more distortion. You might not have enough headroom. You might shave off your transients, and it's just not going to deliver the highest quality sound, especially with very high impedance headphones. So that's more of a diminishing returns kind of thing. After a certain point, you've got enough voltage, and then you don't really need to have any more. Otherwise, you're just going to listen at deafening levels for that to become an issue. So the Fosse Audio amp is something like 14 volts, which is, in my opinion, enough. You probably don't need any more than that, but you do get more than that with the Austrian Audio. You get way more than that. You get like 28 volts. And with the benchmark, of course, you get a ludicrous amount. You get 30 volts of output voltage. Now, I don't need to come on here and start hallucinating sonic characteristics out of these amps with all sorts of flowery adjectives. I'll leave that nonsense to the audiophiles. The things that are actually important to us studio users leads us to see that the typical pro audio recording interfaces are a complete letdown or just objectively failure in many of these key tests. And the headphone amps built into mixing consoles and other pro audio devices are usually also completely crap, regardless of their marketing hype, because often you just get a potentiometer, and if you want something actually serious with proper recallable level and fine granularity and low output impedance and technically perfect sound quality and buckets of output voltage, well, the only thing here that does that in my test was the benchmark unit, which is $4,000. It is actually difficult to achieve such a high quality product, and the benchmark one is the only one that performed to that level in this test. If you want all of those things in the perfect ideal metrics. Now, it's also a line amplifier, which I didn't discuss. If we turn it around, it's got a whole bunch of connectivity on the back. And so what you can do is if you've got like a DAC which outputs a really hot level, for example, and then you've got a hi-fi setup with a lower level expected on the amplifier, you can use this as kind of like a gain staging device so that you can match the levels and get the best signal to noise ratio and stuff like that. So for me, the main thing that this does really well is act as the most supreme headphone amplifier pretty much on the market. So ironically, the one at the start of the video that looked the most snake oil seems to be the only one left in the race by the end of it, but that's if your standard is the absolute highest benchmark quality, and the fact that it has benchmark written at the front of it is an indication that that actually might be the case here. But so the Fosse Audio ZH3, it's got less output voltage, but it doesn't really matter because it's got more than enough anyway. Its gain knob doesn't have the best granularity, but it's completely recallable, and if 2 dB steps doesn't bother you, it's 200 quid, and so it's that's pretty good as well. And by the way, this is a quick side note, a feature which I thought was pretty cool on the Fosse Audio headphone amplifier is that not only does it have a built-in DAC, it also has the ability to change the reconstructive filter in the DAC, which is a feature that mainly is just available on higher priced units, but that one is like 200 quid and you can do it. So I found that pretty cool. Okay, so at the start of the video, I said that I'd reveal 2 mystery headphone amplifiers at the end. So let's do that now. So what would you say if I was to tell you that these headphone amplifiers have perfect channel balance and they're approaching 0 ohms output impedance, and they've got no coloration on dynamic headphones. They've got precisely recallable monitoring gain with a granularity of 0.01 dB per step. And what if I was to tell you that they come with an integrated DAC and that they're essentially free? That's right, I'm talking about my trusty old 2015 Apple MacBook Pro and also my somewhat newer M4 Mac Mini. Simply plugging your headphones into the inbuilt headphone jack gives you crazy good sound quality, and you can actually use that for studio work. Yes, you can use this for mixing, and yes, you can even use the inbuilt headphone jack on this laptop for mastering. There you go. I've said it. Comment down below. It's gonna be fun down below in the comments on this video now I've said that. It's not just as simple as that. There's some caveats that we need to bear in mind. But this headphone amplifier has better channel balance than this $1,500 Austrian Audio high-end headphone amp. It's true. It has better granularity than the Fosse Audio amplifier, and it has better granularity even than the benchmark unit. It has lower output impedance than professional level gear. It certainly has lower output impedance than this piece of crap. It has lower output impedance than the Focusrite unit. It definitely has lower output impedance than the TC Electronic BMC2, and it has lower output impedance than many pieces of professional gear that you might get. It simply has objectively, measurably, demonstrably superior qualities than many professional headphone amplifiers that you might see in the studio. Some people might not accept that, but it's true. But there are some big caveats that we need to discuss to clarify this. Firstly, you have to set the volume level with manually inputted text into audio MIDI setup, and the integrated DAC unfortunately rolls off quite early when working at 44.1. So if you're able to hear very high frequencies above 16 kilohertz, you might notice this impacting the sound quality and rolling it off and making it sound dull and less airy in the highs when working at 44.1. So in order to actually get very high quality sound out of this, you need to be working at a higher sample rate. So if you're actually working at 44.1, then that is actually objectively not going to be as good as another professional option. So that's a big caveat, of course. The next one is that the output voltage is less than 3 volts. So if you have very high impedance headphones, this might not be enough juice to reliably drive your headphones with a nice amount of headroom. So it works just fine with moderate impedance headphones like the Sennheiser HD 600 or HD 660S. Whether it's 150 or 300 ohms, it actually works just fine with the Sennheiser HD headphones, and it certainly works very well with the OLLO X1 and even the Austrian Audio Composer headphones that I have here. Also, Apple computers, especially the Pro models and the Apple Silicon models, are actually good products. They're designed high quality parts, and although the chip that they use in here might cost some pennies, I don't know how expensive the audio chip is that they use. However they've done it, they've designed it to be good, and it works, and it's demonstrably objectively good. Whereas if you just use some PC laptop, well, have fun with that. It's just going to have like random lucky dip junk quality components to produce the absolute cheapest possible computer. And not only are you going to get zero consistency between different PCs, the quality is likely to be just horrendous. And in fact, I tried to measure these tests on my wife's PC laptop, but the quality is just so bad. It's just essentially broken. It's just going to say it's broken. It's so bad. So in conclusion, the Behringer unit as normal is a complete load of crap. The TC BMC2 is one of the best digital monitor controllers that you can get. That doesn't cost thousands and thousands of dollars, but the headphone output is also crap. The Fosse Audio ZH3 is really cool for the money. It's going to blow everything out of the water in the hi-fi world. Manufacturers are going to be crying about this one because it's just absolutely going to disrupt the industry. Like many of their other products, it's crazy good value for money. It looks good. It pairs with the ZA3 amplifier. Yep. The Austrian Audio unit is absolutely a work of art. It just looks amazing, and the volume knob just feels very luxurious, and when it goes down to the lowest position, there's this satisfying clunk sound, and this thing slides open to give you the balanced connector, and it's just everything just feels really nicely machined metal, and like the power buttons feel really nice, and everything is just supremely beautiful aesthetic. If I had a really aesthetic hi-fi, this would be one of the main contenders because it just looks so nice. However, in the studio, it's not my first choice. So the Benchmark HP A4 is obviously just the height of engineering mastery. If you have money and you like nice things and you want the best, this is the best headphone amplifier that I have ever tested on every conceivable metric. Absolutely perfect. It's down to you whether you like the LCD screen, the aesthetics of it is up to you. I think it looks cool. I don't think you need it for studio use, but if you've got the money and you want something which is just an engineering masterpiece, this is such a thing. Now, in terms of any pro audio interface with an analog potentiometer knob on the front, it's going to be the same story. It's not up to the task of critical studio monitoring with headphones. Of course, you can just whack your headphones in and listen. You can plug your headphones into anything and listen, but that's not what we're doing at a professional level in the studio. If you're monitoring at professional level in the studio critically with headphones, you need a recallable level. So any interface, whether it's the Behringer one or the Focusrite one or any other one that doesn't have a digitally controlled level that is recallable precisely, is going to be the same story. I would rather use the built-in MacBook Pro headphone jack any day of the week. So I've used that extensively, and it's way better than using some analog pot with channel imbalances and just a random level. So any day of the week, laptop, Apple, specifically Apple laptop, don't confuse it. And people saying that I recommend the inbuilt socket on a PC. No, I don't. Only with specific pro level Apple laptops, and the Apple Silicon Mac Mini I've confirmed is also decent. Then I would prefer that any day of the week to some device where it's just got an analog potentiometer in the studio. So there you go. Hopefully this video was illuminating. Let me know down below what you think.